Hello and welcome to Apama Queries. Here we will look at a specific query in more detail from the ATM fraud sample. To give a better overview of creating a query, I'm going to add a new query to the project and build it up from scratch to replicate the existing repeated max withdrawal Apama query in the project. Obviously with a different name so it doesn't clash. Now let's go through each of the sections to explain them and add what we need for this specific query. The parameters section is optional and specifies any parameters used by and is available throughout the project. Queries can be either parameterized or not parameterized. Parameterized queries such as samples can be controlled by Scenario Browser or other tools such as dashboards to create instances of a query. If a query has no parameters defined, then one instance is started once the query is injected. To replicate our query, we need to define a single parameter here, threshold of type integer. The input section names the event type, which is the input to the query. The most important part of the input definition is the key, which defines which fields identify a partition. Use this to control how the input streams are split up and grouped into separate windows. Typically these are identities of real-world objects, such as ATMs or card numbers in our examples. Events with different values for the key fields will be processed separately. A query will only find patterns within a window where all of the events have the same key. Therefore, all inputs must have the same definition for the key fields so that the query can group together events for the same partition. Event filters are optional and, if specified, determine which events go into the query window. You can specify how long a window is by the number of events to retain or what time the events must be within. For our query, we need to base it on the withdrawal events, those that occur within 1 minute of each other, and we will partition each window based on the ATM field. As with the other tabs and dialogues, you can hover over to get some relevant tooltip information. We also need to add some filtering. We only want to evaluate events where the withdrawal amount is greater than the threshold parameter. Parameter values can be used anywhere in an Apama query. The main area on the screen is around building up the pattern. You can select the input events from the palette, dragging it onto the canvas to build up your pattern. Where you hover over and drop the event instance depicts what area of the pattern it relates to. Note the options that appear when dragging and hovering over an existing item. For our query, we want to check for a pattern of withdrawal event, followed by a withdrawal event, followed by another withdrawal event. In other words, 3 withdrawals within the time period. Remember the time restrictions that we set on the inputs? Choosing the options before or after that event or pattern depicts the event's place in the overall pattern. In the Actions section, we can add an action that the query executes when it finds a specific pattern. The action can be to send an event, and we would like to send a Fraud 1 alert event. You can change the name of the action that will send this event, and add a useful description. You must also specify 1 or more channels to send this event to, and here we will send it to apamax.querysamples.fraudalerts channel, which our monitor is subscribed to. Next, we need to specify the information that we want to send in the event by populating the fields. Double-click to edit the information, and right-click to populate it with an event field or expression. The conditions are optional and list any conditions that must hold true for the events matched in the pattern. For where conditions, the expression must be true for the query to fire. The query will look for any combination of events where the condition is true. Aggregates are not required for this query, but briefly, an aggregate expression performs a calculation such as an average over all the sets of events that match the pattern. And that's the query replicated. Apama queries can be edited using the graphical editor that we've been using, or if preferred, using the source view. The source view is the form the query takes on disk, and any changes made in the source are reflected in the graphical editor. You can see if I change the followed by to an and, this is reflected in the graphical editor, and if I change it back, it's reflected in the source. Thanks for watching.